Nick got his bachelor's degree in computer science from Cornell University. After that, he spent 4 years as a research scientist at MIT's Lincoln Lab, which is pretty impressive. You know, for a undergraduate to go into a research role like that is not something I think is super common. So that's really cool to see. After that, Nick spent his time at UC Irvine, so University of California at Irvine, getting his PhD in computer science. And then after that, for the past few years, he's been a freelancer and doing data science. So I'm really excited to talk about Nick because he's got so much experience as a freelancer and as a data scientist and in computer science. So I think we're all in for a treat to kind of learn from Nick's journey. So we're going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A for about 15, 20 minutes, depending on the question volume. So you guys will be able to ask your questions to Nick and get some feedback. So thanks, Nick, for joining. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
Awesome. So one thing that's, I think a lot of people go through this. They, will get some technical degree. Maybe they'll get a master's degree or get a PhD, and they don't really know what to do next. Maybe they did research and they really liked research, but at a certain point, it just kind of, you know, maybe a lot of people that are like, okay, I'm doing all this hard stuff and I'm barely getting paid for it. That's part of it. It's like, can I actually make some real money? Or they, for whatever reason, maybe they want to do something more practical, something that has like a impact on, a shorter term impact on others and whatnot. So I'm really curious to see and hear about people's experiences when they go from research and PhD programs into the business world, into the real world. So could you kind of talk through what that transition was like for you?
Yeah, so I guess for me, it had to do really with the culture of academia and what has come to be the culture in big tech, which I guess I'll just describe as very extreme political correctness for the purpose of this interview, that I saw to be very dangerous and not a community that I wanted to be a part of in the long term.
Mm.
So I kind of just decided I'm going out on my own. I'm going to freelance. So when I finished my degree, I basically had no plan. I'm like, I'm just gonna go out and freelance and figure it out. And like the first year, like I told you, was pretty tough to start getting clients and figuring out um, like it's just like the whole landscape. Like it's kind of like you're on your
Mm.
own trying to figure out how to interact with clients,
Yeah.
what they really want, and like when they say one thing, like what do they actually mean, and stuff like that. So and then also like advertising yourself. So I'd say like a lot of that in the first year was what I focused on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of how I
So
got.
so now you kind of go from like, okay, doing this like research stuff, doing this computer science stuff, and now you have to like get clients and sell yourself and do
Mhm.
interviews and all this kind of stuff. Were there any, was it just like trial and error and just like a lot of failure and just figuring it out? Or, I mean, were there some things and tips that really helped you kind of navigate that situation?
Um, I'd say like trial and error a lot, but also one thing that I think that I had like miscalibrated was like I guess I thought of it as like applying for a job where it's like they're really qualifying you hard on your technical skills
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I think like a lot of the freelance roles are more like people are not very technical. They're looking for someone to fix their, or even just get started on their data science or machine learning pipeline, figure out like what machine learning is, like what it can and
Hmm.
can't do, stuff like that. Um, that I guess I was like more technical, like as if some like expert were going to interview me, and it was not like
Hmm.
that at all. It's kind of like they want someone who's like has certain skills, and I think just mostly like I'm going to make whatever you're doing work, and um, I think that that's like kind of what clients are looking for. That
Hmm.
not really like qualifying you technically to like a very
Yeah.
precise degree.
Yeah, we're all just technical people to non-technical people. It doesn't matter if
Right.
you have a PhD or what, if you can program or whatever, you're technical. That's really cool. So when you finally did get that first client, like what did that look like? Can you recall the experience at all?
Yeah, so I was more doing like smaller jobs at first, and I guess like the first it's like month-long contract that I got was like it was like this guy was trying to predict like ad revenue from like previous sales, and he wanted to like build a
Hmm.
machine learning algorithm that looked like the past 7 days of data and
Hmm.
figured out predicted what the next day would be. So it's like a kind of a simple machine learning problem, but also for me, like I was when I was working on my degree, I was mostly working in MATLAB, and I didn't realize how
Mm.
much people had shifted to Python. So
Yeah.
just getting started and getting familiar with the language and stuff like that. So like it was kind of a good opportunity for me to do that, even though the pay was like I took like a pretty low paying role at first, which I think is maybe what people are able to get at first until they build a
Right.
reputation. Um, but so that was just a good experience, and also from that, just seeing like what clients really want. Like they didn't.
Hmm.
I guess like for me, I think that they want someone to like innovate and do some like really novel things, and it was more of
Yeah.
like kind of a vanilla thing that you would expect is like what he was looking for. So
Yeah.
that was like an interesting, still in the same vein as before of like they're not like super technical people a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of transition into like what your work is like now. I want to be cognizant of time because I want to make sure people in the audience can ask their questions. Um, but kind of thinking of how you operate now and how you operated when you first got started, what do you see as like the biggest differences? Maybe what do you see as like the biggest lessons learned in how you operate now versus when you got started?
So I think that that is the biggest lesson. Also, like just really trying to figure out what value you can bring to the client.
Yeah.
Um, I also think with data science, especially like visualization is very important to clients. It's like I think like
Mm.
people get like overly caught up in like charts and stuff like that that it can be a downfall. But it's like clients need to see like these types of charts and progress, like whatever the metric is, like uh, that this metric is improving continuously, like accuracy or whatever when you're working with them. Um, and I guess also one tool that I've used a lot that's been very successful has been Streamlit for making
Mm.
data apps. So just like a very easy way for to like take your results, put it into like a little app or GUI, and give it to a client to let them play with it, and um, one to like communicate like really what's going on. So it's like I think when you're working on a project, it's like kind of hard for them to tell like why some idea might not work or why it is not or why this is working or like what it's actually doing, and like to give them an app and let them play with it I think is like
Yeah.
been very helpful in like helping them understand some of the basics of data science in the
Hmm.
context of their problem. So I've had a lot of success like using that interface and like even giving apps off to clients that they use regularly. So um, but yeah, I mean that's obviously not it's not like the nuts and bolts of what's going on, but it's that has been like super helpful
Right.
for a lot of clients.
Yeah. So the visualization is like a critical kind of tool in helping the client like kind of better understand the work that you're doing and the value that you're bringing to the project. And this kind of brings up a interesting point. So I feel like there's always like that chasm between the client and their knowledge and then like the data scientist. So we'll understand the AI, we'll understand the machine learning, the data, all that kind of stuff, but they'll understand the business. And then there's like this big void. And it's like if the data scientist understood the business a bit better, he would probably be able to be more effective. And then if the business better understood the technical stuff a bit better, they could also be a bit more effective. So how do it seems like visualization is one thing that helps navigate this, but are there any other things that you think are critical in kind of closing the gap between business and data scientist?
Um, Yeah, I guess from my point of view, I just kind of wonder like what the end step of what they're asking for is. So it's like sometimes they ask you to do something and then it's like kind of right, but then it's like what are you actually going to do? Like oh, they're like oh now we're going to take this and like pipe it into this other thing and then this is going to
Hmm.
run this and it's like kind of subtly understand like this is probably not going to work or there's at least like a lot more that goes into it. But like I think from their point of view, they're like oh like the AI will figure it out type of thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of like try to explain like what machine learning is like at a like high level, and I've found just like using simple models of like linear models for classification or nearest neighbors, where you could tell them like this is your data and this is how it's going to classify. Like it's going to look for the 10 things in the database that look most similar to it, and
Hmm.
like if you're not happy with that model, um, then there's like something wrong with like the overall like structure of your problem. Like if you don't
Hmm.
think that looking at the nearest like 10 things can tell you what you think you're trying to figure out, like to predict, or if there's a problem with it, like in the example, the financial sector, it's like if you're using data from the coronavirus, then you look at like the 10 transactions that look most similar and some of them are from that period
Mm.
obviously like it's going to be biased in that direction. So I guess just to them, like stuff like that, that kind of like opens the box a little bit to like a simple conceptual model, makes them
Mm.
see like why certain ideas or will not work or why they're not collecting the data correctly or what else would need to be done. Where it's like
Yeah.
if it's just a black box, like oh, like the neural network will figure it out type of thing. So kind of going to those two simple models, linear and nearest neighbor, I think is a way to kind of
Yeah.
expose to them why some ideas might not work.
So do you feel yourself using simpler models more often in these freelancing engagements?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, not necessarily like those with like boosted trees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Good on a lot of data sets just like out of the box. But I think like a lot of clients are really like the more complex models are for like when you have like a firm machine learning problem and you've set it up and you've cleaned the data and you have this data set and now people are working on different methods for classifying it over like 10 years or something like that. And
Hmm.
for a lot of
Yeah.
the clients that I've had, it's like they're just getting started and it's like
Right.
it's even like first of all like do they even need to use machine learning at all? Um,
Hmm.
like are they setting up the problem correctly? Do they have the right kind of data, the right amount of data? What biases are in the data of like do you have medical data? Do you have like duplicates of the same patient, even if it's like measured on different days and stuff like that that are
Hmm.
I mean, it's not like revolutionary that like this biases a model, but it's like to them they don't understand like necessarily why
Yeah.
this would be a problem or just how much. Like they might think like oh maybe this will like have a 10% effect, but in reality it could just completely tank the model. And like I've seen people who've like hired other freelancers and they have like machine learning code and it's like it's not doing even these basic checks or like
Mm.
understanding of the data and the problem.
Yeah.
Um,
They're
so
just like jumping to the sophisticated, sexy stuff. They're not doing the basics, making sure the data's in a suitable format.
yeah, or it's just like it's more like subtle stuff that's wrong, like kind of that thing with the
Okay.
patients of like so it's like if you have duplicates of the patient, then you do just like a naive train test set split, then
Yeah.
you have the same patient in the train in the test, and sometimes it's like it's not so
Yeah.
obvious that the way the data is collected is in these like different cohorts and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I found like
So I really
oh, go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I found like a lot of clients have machine learning code developed that is not doing some of that basic
Right.
stuff, and that's kind of why I think getting the whole framework correct and like getting a basic model working is kind of the
Hmm.
challenge for a lot of them, and it's not so
Yeah.
much like that you have a framework and then you're trying to get 5% better accuracy with more complex
Yeah.
models and stuff like that.
I really like that you brought up this point because it was actually like a big, like almost shock to me when I kind of came into the data science world. Like I was working as a data scientist at Toyota Financial Services,
Mhm.
and nowhere could you find a not linear model. Like everything was a super simple model. And that was like a I was kind of like disillusioned from that. I was coming in with this expectation like, oh, this is like big league, serious data science. It's going to be like neural nets, sophisticated techniques, but it's just super basic techniques, and it's obviously working because it's like a multi-billion-dollar company, so they're doing something right. And so I like your point. It's
Mhm.
like, do they even need to use machine learning? How can can they get far with just like basic statistical, basic statistics, or how far can they get with just like basic techniques like linear regression? So one thing I'm curious about, and I don't know if this is you'll have a great answer for this, because I feel as a freelancer, maybe you don't see a whole lot of other freelancers operate and how they do their work. But I'll ask it anyway. What do you think is like the number one reason why a data science freelancer would fail? Like, what do you think is like some of the biggest mistakes someone can make as coming into freelancing?
Mhm. Um, yeah, so I guess I'd have to think. I think it depends like how much experience you have. Like if you have no experience, or if you're just coming out of undergrad. Though I mean, there are freelancers who are successful like with coming out with that experience. Or if you kind of like had a career beforehand, and also like what success is to you. So like I told
Hmm.
you, like success for me was surviving financially that first year, and so I'm like I don't have a job, like this is it. And for people who are whatever the standard freelance data scientist salary is, like 150K or whatever, if you consider failure not making that in your first year, that might not happen. So you might just quit um,
Yeah.
immediately. So I think it depends on your whole like what you define as success and your
Right.
experience beforehand. But I mean, I think maybe like people don't want to build up their profiles and their experience, that they just kind of want to jump into like a decently paying
Mm.
job. And then also, I guess for me, I was doing a lot of interviews. Like um, I was just like talking with people. It's like they kind of do these like hour long interviews where they talk about what their project is to see if it's a fit. And I did that with like dozens of clients actually. And I guess for
Mm.
me, I was like very wary about which clients to take, because I think people have like a weird expectation of machine learning, of like they'll just hire someone and pay you like a few $1,000s, and then like the AI will like fix their company. Um, so it's like I want to make sure they have realistic expectations and like of like what it takes. So I think a lot of people did not, so I did not like pursue accepting jobs with them.
Mm. Yeah.
I was more conservative in that regard, but um, like I mean, I was just worried of like getting a bad review of like we paid this guy and
Yeah.
like the AI did not fix our company like it's supposed to, and you failed. So I kind of avoided
Yeah.
that. But I think maybe some people get like bad reviews early on.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'd say otherwise, maybe like not communicating with clients. Like actually, one thing I'll mention is that what I do almost like every week with clients is I do like a screen recording of like what I accomplished that week.
Oh,
So it's like,
cool. Yeah.
like the code, or like if I'm using Streamlit, like the Streamlit app, and like this is the functionality that I added, and it's like a 15-minute video, and I have like a notepad of like just like an overview of what the video and what I did, and it's like it just very clearly shows like what you're doing and like what value you're adding to them,
Mm.
and it also helps like later down the line if they want to like bring someone else in, it's like they could go watch your videos of like
Yeah.
10-minute videos from the past like few months and get up to speed. Um, so I think that's something that like clients really liked, and it's like it's a simple thing, but it's like to
Yeah.
them it was like so powerful. I found.
Hmm. Okay, that's really cool. So I'm hearing like three things. Like, one, maybe newcomers have unrealistic expectations of freelance, and then that kind of leads them to get demoralized early on when they don't see that success.
Right.
Two was oh no, I just forgot it. I'll jump to the third one, which was communication, just like effectively communicating to the client. Um, and that second one was really good. It's escaping me now. Um, realistic expectations.
I forgot it as well. So
Oh
um,
man, it was really good.
I guess you're recording
Um,
it, so we can figure it out after.
yeah,
Choose,
we'll get
choose,
in the
choose
recording.
clients wisely. Someone wrote in the chat.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
what it was. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
people, they may not be thoughtful in the clients that they take on. They're just going to like, you know, hop onto any project. And yeah, maybe those first two go hand in hand. Like people are just trying to make money and they don't necessarily work with people that are a good fit for them. And I think that's kind of like one of the biggest upsides of freelance is you get to choose who you work with so you can make sure that you guys are aligned on values and
Mhm.
other things that are important. Okay, so I think we went a little over, but I did want to kind of look toward the future because we did the past, we did the present. Kind of like, what do you see as like, what does your future look like for you? Like, what kind of goals do you have in mind? Do you see yourself as like freelancing is just going to be your career, or do you have like aspirations to go in any other type of direction?
So I guess like making money and building a bank account is important. So that's like one of
Hmm.
my goals, near-term
Okay,
goals. But also like getting into entrepreneurial efforts. So I think like from freelance, I've worked with a lot of startups and companies that are
nice.
trying to get started and trying to like get funding and stuff like that. So I guess like just seeing how that is and having a little bit of experience, but still getting paid, has helped me like understand kind of what that takes. So I think for entrepreneurial efforts of my own, this will help. And then I'm also trying to build up like a writing Substack that you saw on
Oh,
LinkedIn.
nice.
So trying to become like a writer, and so I guess writing and entrepreneurship are the two long-term goals, and short-term is to just keep making money and working with different clients and getting experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. So now I want to open it up to the audience. So if you guys have your questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll check the chat for anything. Or, just go ahead and raise your hand and then we'll bring you up on stage to ask your question. We got a lot of activity in the chat now. Okay, here we go. Ben asked, do you have a niche? Can you describe your journey for finding a niche?
So I guess you're saying in terms of like the type of machine learning that I do, in terms of like a
Uh,
niche.
yeah, I think so. Or maybe the types of clients you work with, the industries
Mhm.
that you operate in.
Um, I would say not really. Like it's been pretty general and pretty broad. Yeah, so I'm like I know there are people who are trying to specialize now in like large language models and like chatbots and stuff, and that's actually like stuff that I am not interested in doing. So I don't take clients in those fields. So I'm, I
Mm,
guess, not part of that niche, but I guess like more
yeah.
general. Um, but I guess one thing I will mention that I think is important for success is like having past clients that are within the domain that you're working in, even like tangentially. Like if somebody has like a financial problem and you've worked on financial data in the past, even if it's just like a month-long project, that helps them so much in like choosing to hire you because they're like, oh,
Hmm.
he seems good and he's worked on something that's kind of similar to this.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that helps. So I think having like maybe like a breadth of experience, even like short projects, helps a lot for finding like new clients in those areas.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like that you have like a anti niche where you don't you specifically don't work on
Yeah.
anything involving large language models. That's funny. I think that helps. That helps actually create your niche too. Okay, so Tan asked, how has your vetting process for clients changed from when you first started to now?
Um, yeah, so I guess it's just easier. So I guess I'm kind of like working with only a small number of clients that are like bigger. So I think that's what has
Mm,
changed. In terms of vetting, like I just have a feel for how people are now, and I'm like I can kind of tell like this person is just getting started, or this person's like just looking for like a quick fix versus this person is like kind of committed to having like a long term solution. Um, yeah, I can't. I guess it's just like having a feel and then trying to figure out like kind of how dedicated they are to the project, and
mm,
also I think like how much they understand machine learning and like how it's not just like come in and like dump some AI into my company.
I wish I could dump AI into my company too. All right, we got a question incoming from Ash. Also, you guys can, feel free to raise your hands and ask questions in real time too. That's another option if you're not on mobile, of course. Unfortunately, Discord doesn't support mobile users to use the stage as of yet. Oh, here we go. Ash asked, "How is the experience collaborating with other freelancers on a project?"
Yeah, that's actually something I haven't done that I think is would be beneficial. Is like I've mainly been working on my own, and I think this might even be one of the negatives of freelancing. Is like if you're working on your own, you're not really building your skills or working with other people, and even just like getting a little bit of help on something
Yeah.
from someone else could be very helpful. So that's why I think that this platform that you've developed could be useful in that regard. Um, but I've like yeah, I guess I've kind of like come in to like take over projects that people had worked on in the past, and I've had to like interact with them and just try to understand what they were doing. And I guess, like I said, I was kind of surprised at like some of the code that people have written that I had to take over, with, like how badly documented and written a lot of it was. And it's kind of like 101 of like you should separate stuff out into modules and not just have this like one monster code and like weird or no comments. But I have been handed off a lot of code that does look like that.
Yeah. I think, as Nick was kind of alluding to, like freelance being so isolating and lonely at times, that was definitely a motivation for creating this Discord. Because, I saw myself as like, okay, I want to get into freelance, but I really like working with people. I love collaborating with people. I love like those like synergistic, dynamic conversations where everyone's excited about the project and everyone's helping each other. So, that's definitely a motivation here, and I feel like it's just increasing every single time we have one of these events too. Okay, so we got a question from Ben. We'll invite him up on stage. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, welcome. Oh, well, I guess welcome to me. Um, hey, nice to meet you, Nick. I used to work at a company called in the Boston area as well, called Systems and Technology Research. We had a lot of alumni from Lincoln Labs. But anyway, it's right around the corner from where my parents live. Anyway, thanks for sharing everything. It was super useful and super interesting. Um, can you Mm, what was it about, big tech that made you not even want to try it? And, do you feel like, and I don't even mean big tech, a lot of people will graduate and then just go and immediately join a startup company, which is, 4 or 5 people. Why did you not even want to try it? And do you feel like you've missed anything?
Yeah, so I guess I don't want to go into too much political stuff in this Discord, but of like just stuff that was happening at Google when they fired James Damore, for example, for talking about like gender dynamics in the workplace, and mostly what I saw in graduate school of like a very aggressive ideology that people were enforcing, and a lot of like censorship on social media from those companies, especially during the election, um, that I knew was not a good environment. So yeah, so I don't even think they'd want me if they knew what I believed. So it doesn't even matter. I just kind of decided that I had to do freelancing.
So maybe a bit more broadly, do you feel like you missed out on anything not working, maybe not a large tech company, but at a larger organization and just going straight into freelance?
Yeah, I think just like understanding like the whole like product from like soup to nuts of like how do you deal with developing a product, an idea, deploying models, dealing with like user interface issues of like you might not think of it when you're doing machine learning, but like how how it's going to be
Yeah.
interfaced with all these other components that so I do think like you would have a benefit like technically if you had worked at some company for 3 years where you were really seeing the soup to nuts of how everything was built and knew like what you were doing and what other people were doing. Um, and I do think you do miss out if you just try to go straight into freelancing.
Yeah. So we have a question from Sarthak. How do you typically break down a project into smaller, more manageable tasks?
Um, yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess it's kind of just like a general question that I guess I would deal with that generally. But in terms of clients, like I'd say like a lot of times it almost starts with like a smaller task that then blossoms into like a larger project. Like that's kind of been my experience of um I'd say it's like it hasn't been that like people have this like giant project and then they want you to come and do these little tasks. It's like they kind of have this little task that they want you to do, and kind of like after doing that they might see like, oh, like now I see of all these other tasks that need to be done after that, or I see this more generally. So like a lot of stuff that I've done has even been like people like kind of intend to work with me for like a month, and then after that they like, extend the scope of the project for like another 3 months or something like that. So it's kind of been like the opposite way, actually.
That's cool. Let's see. I don't know if this is a question, but we had a comment from Tang. I always start my code blocks with the comment, when I started this code, only God and I knew what the plan was, and now it's only God. Good luck. All right. So thank you for adding some color. Then come back up to the stage for another question.
Thanks. You mentioned something in response to a question, Nick, about when you adopt a project, you come on board to a project, and there's just some legacy code or some legacy documentation that's,
Hmm.
that's terrible, right? I mean, I had a similar situation in a recent freelancing engagement, and I mean, I'm just curious, like, how do you manage that communication with the client, right? Because they think you're going to just show up and start like ripping out lines of code and delivering value, and you just tell them, how do they take it when they don't take it so well? When you're like, yeah, man, I got to do some soul searching here. This is going to take a bit. How do
Yeah.
you deal with that kind of situation?
Um, yeah, so I'm trying to think of like specific examples that I've had. I guess two come to mind. So one, they wanted me to build a machine learning project. It's like for like classifying credit card transactions as like what type of transaction it was. Um, and like as I went through the code and then started talking with them, I was like this makes no sense of what you're trying to do for like your final outcome of like what you're trying to do of like
Mm.
qualify lenders, and um, you don't even need to use machine learning here, and you should not have even done this in the first place. So like I didn't have to like even deal with that code because I'm just like, you should be doing something totally different, and then I did that for them, and it was just like kind of like standard data processing. um, so I kind of just started over in that case, and I guess I somewhat got lucky because I was able to do it pretty quickly and do a good job. But yeah, so I think some clients, especially people who don't understand machine learning, like they think, oh, we have some machine learning here, and um, yeah, so I think in the first like week or two, just discovering what they need to do, and like with one client, I'm basically saying like I kind of need to start over on this, and this is what it's going to be, and this is kind of the trajectory of the project, and they kind of thought we would hire you, and then in 2 weeks we'd have an improved model, and it's like in 2 weeks we haven't even figured out like what you did or how I can even go about starting to incorporate this. So I guess some of them, I don't know how they take it emotionally. I guess some of them are like surprised that their code isn't as good as they thought it was.
Mm.
But it's more, I think, about the budget of like if they had whatever enough budget to hire you for 3 weeks, and in 3 weeks you're only able to do this much. they'll either just, I think, cut the project off or kind of come to terms that it's going to take 3 months or whatever and start to work with you on that. Yeah, I've actually like I haven't had anyone that like goes like AWOL and is upset that I said that their code wasn't good and that just can take this long. I think just like kind of being honest, and then if the contract does break off, it's more because of the budget that they had thought they needed.
Mhm. So we got another question from Ash. In your experience, after the first meeting, do you have a sense of how long the project takes, or does it take more meetings to figure out the data quality and the other building blocks? With regard to what you mentioned, how does a project go from 1 month and then extended to another X months?
Yeah, so I would say definitely not the first meeting, but after like the first few weeks, like just really understanding what they've done, what data they've collected, what their anticipations are. Like even like I said, like going through people's code of like what they did before could take, especially if we're working like part time, like a few weeks and talking back and forth with them.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I'd say like definitely it takes some time. But like I said, I've had projects where people like they say we're going to start something, and then I start like looking at their data. I'm like, you don't even have the data to do what you think we can do, so it kind of just like stops like after this like initial exploration. And I guess I am getting paid to scope this project out and to work with them for like a week or so, but it's like those are not it's like not ideal, obviously.
Right.
Um, yeah, so like how does a project go from like 1 month to X month? So I think partly it's on the clients part themselves of like I think they're trying to feel you out that like they kind of maybe have like a bigger project in mind, and they're trying to just like get you for a little bit to like work on one project. And I think that's from their perspective why they like freelancing or freelancers is they don't have to hire anyone, like they don't have to interview you, they don't have to bring you on board and do all of this stuff and then fire you if it's not working. Like they could just give you a little thing for 3 weeks or a month, test you out, and then um, if it's going well, they say like, well, we have all this other stuff that's either related to this project or part of this project or related to it, and they're happy to work with you if you do well in that first month. So I think part of it is on their end.
Yeah, that's really good. I think the flexibility is beneficial for all parties with freelance work. That's
Um,
one of the reasons I like it so much.
yeah, there's upsides and downsides to it. So it's like,
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, like I've said to you, if you have clients, it's like they could just kind of drop you at any time,
Right.
um, whether it's your fault or not. I mean, it could have to do with the budget or whatever they're doing behind the scenes. And then you kind of have to scramble to find a new client. And I guess for me, that still is like a big worry
Mm.
of doing what I'm doing, and I think trying to get like to figure out how to add more stability to like the ecosystem in terms of work, I think is like a big challenge. Like I think if I could have a steady job like 20 hours a week and
Mm.
then doing freelancing for like the rest, so it's like even if all of that blew up, I still have this steady baseline. That would
Yeah.
be ideal.
All right. Let's see. Are there any other questions? Okay, we got another one from Ben. This might be the last question.
Yeah, sorry. I actually have a new. I'll prioritize. How do you
Well, if you have
manage?
multiple questions, go ahead and you can ask multiple questions. That's fine too.
How do you? Okay, okay. How do you manage fee structure? You know, is it always hourly, or do you do like milestone based charging, or do you say like, oh, this will take X amount of time? I have some friends who'll be like, it takes X amount of time, and then after that, I'll charge 1.5x my rate or something like that, or yeah, or is it differ by project? How has that evolved for you, and how do you do it now?
Yeah. So I only take hourly projects now,
Mm.
and I took like a fixed price one, and it was like a smaller project for like a few $1,000s, and I thought it'd be pretty quick to do, and like it seemed easy. And actually, like after I did it, I was like, I did it in like, or I thought I did it in like one day, and I was like, I almost feel bad like charging him this much for it. I was like literally gonna go to him and be like, just like give me half of that. And then the exact opposite happens that like his project like didn't make any sense. Like, oh no, you have to like do this and do all these other things, and it wound up taking months, like not consistent work, but like a few hours a week or something. And I was just like, this is not good, and I'm not doing that. And I've also like helped people hire freelancers, and I've seen like I think it's bad for the clients as well, because if you have a fixed milestone, like whoever you hire is just going to try to do the minimum possible to like qualify. I'm like, if they're building a machine learning model, it's like I said, there's like many ways that you can like split the data into train tests, for example, and looking at all these subtleties of like using the same patients or whatever. It's like they're not going to do that. They're just going to say like whatever the sklearn train test split, I made the machine learning model, I tested it, these are the results, and I don't want to fix it anymore because I'm not getting paid for it. So I think it's actually fixed price has not been good in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, it's also especially with data science, which is science. So you're delivering value even if it doesn't, it doesn't.
I think it's also really hard to estimate how long something's going to take without seeing even just like the data, and then like you don't know how long it's going to take to like process the data, even just to clean the data or to do anything. So I think it's just really hard to estimate.
Okay. Thanks. Do you have any stories you can share about any, big failures, any contracts, any clients that just went bad?
Let me think. I never had anything that just like blew up. I would say like things that went bad are just like projects that didn't pan out or didn't work out. I guess like I was talking with Shaw before that. I think one problem with freelancing is that sometimes you get clients who kind of know what they're doing, and they're trying to like set the problem up for you and like kind of manage the data and like, oh, I'll just give you this and you do the machine learning, and they don't understand that like it's more about like how you set the problem up and how you're formulating the problem and all this stuff. And it's like they kind of stand in the way of that, and I've seen projects fail because of that. That I mean, it's like it's not. I'm still doing the work and stuff, but I haven't had anyone like sue me or say I bombed their project or anything. So I haven't had anything like that. So I do think that that is a possibility in the future.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Any more questions, Ben?
Say like, have you heard of like freelancers with crazy bad client stories?
No, I've heard of situations of people giving money back because they bit off more than they could chew. But that's the worst I've heard. I have experienced what you just described, which is like a client who fancies himself as a collaborator to his own detriment.
Yeah.
But no,
yeah, I'd also say that it's partly because, like I said, I was pretty selective with the clients, so maybe that's why.
Right. It's interesting that you were very selective in the beginning. I would think. I mean, I'm experienced the opposite. I mean, I'll take anything that comes my way.
Yeah, so I think like for me, I just was afraid of getting like bad reviews or getting stuck with like a bad client. But yeah, so I think I might have been a little bit more aggressive earlier on. Now that I know what I know, but I was kind of like willing to take anything that seemed reasonable.
Yeah.
We got another comment from Tan. Ben employs his dating strategy, so that's. I hope it's working out for you guys.
I'll have to think about how that maps over.
Because Ben will take anything, just like Tan. There we go. All right. Well, any other questions, Ben?
But one sec. Well, no, it's okay. I'm good.
All right. Well, you can always catch up with Nick after the call if it comes up.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Ben. Yeah, thanks for all the awesome questions. Any more questions? I want to give people one last chance before we break. All right. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I think this was a super awesome session. A lot of really good questions, a lot of really good insights from Nick. This is our first time doing it, like I mentioned at the top. So, we're really experimenting with these member spotlights and this kind of like interview question answer format. So, if you guys have some feedback and you have 30 seconds after this, I just dropped a survey in the chat, so if you guys don't mind sharing some feedback with us, that really helps us. Yeah, and thanks again for taking the time on a Saturday morning or wherever in the world you are on a Saturday to be part of this call. We will post the recording in the past events channel and on our YouTube channel. And I think that's all I wanted to say. Yeah. So with that, let's thank Nick again for an awesome talk or awesome sharing his awesome insights with us. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
All right.
Thanks, Nick.